My daughter, despite all my disagreements, eventually married a boy she had met online. I had warned her. I had pleaded, reasoned, even begged her to reconsider. But she insisted he was different, kind, respectful, promising. Now she says, "Forget me." And the haunting part is, I haven't seen her since that enigmatic honeymoon. No photos, no phone calls, not even a message, just silence. I know my daughter. She would never vanish like this unless something terrible had happened. I'm certain she's caught up in something much bigger than we ever imagined. Something dangerous. The woman, 52 years old, sat stiffly across from the counselor at the police center. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her scarf, her voice tight with grief and disgust. I feel this heavy sadness, as if I've lost everything, and yet no one sees it, she said quietly. She had been referred to the mosque sheriff's counseling circle, seeking help after the strange and disturbing events that had led her here. I'm on the verge of retirement, she continued, and yet I feel more exhausted than ever. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. From the very first days of my marriage, my husband never felt any responsibility, neither for me nor for the children. Her eyes stared into the distance, as if remembering something she didn't want to. He was carefree, she said, as if there were no problems in life. No bills, no broken hearts, no hungry mouths. All of it fell on me. The sorrows, the pain, even the small joys. I carried them alone. She sighed. I would wake early in the morning, go to work like any man would, then come home and turn into a housekeeper, a nurse, a teacher, a mother, a woman with no rest. And still, despite everything, her voice cracked, but she forced herself to go on. Despite everything, I kept believing in love. I kept believing that one day my daughter would have a better life than I did, that she wouldn't repeat my story. But now her daughter was gone. I was content with my life. My husband, with all his strange fantasies and quiet musings, was a calm and decent man. He never bothered me, never raised his voice, never stirred the air with conflict. Our days passed like a silent stream, slow, predictable, and uneventful. And perhaps that was enough. The years flowed by in the same manner. One by one, our children grew up and went in search of their own destinies. My eldest son, full of ambition, pursued higher education and left the house with pride in his eyes. I was proud of him. But my daughter, she took another path. After finishing high school, she abruptly gave up on continuing her education. She began spending most of her time online, wandering through the endless world of social media, virtual spaces that glittered like stars but burned like fire. It was there, in that boundless cyberspace, that her fate began to twist and darken. She was a sweet, gentle soul, a kind girl, soft-hearted, perhaps too much so for this world. She was easily swayed by emotions, always trying to see the good in others. If someone showed her even a little affection, her heart would open like a spring blossom, ready to pour all her love and trust into them. She would offer her affection as if handing someone a cup brimming with warmth and kindness, completely, sincerely, without hesitation. I had finally reached the threshold of retirement. I was tired but hopeful, eager to enjoy the calm after a lifetime of responsibilities. With more time on my hands, I tried to be more present for her. I wanted to teach her the things I had missed sharing all these years: housekeeping skills, daily wisdom, small things that mothers pass on to daughters when they're not constantly exhausted. But I didn't know she was already slipping away, slowly drowning in the dark waters of the digital world. Her name was Ross, and on the Telegram messaging app she met a man, someone from one of the coastal cities of Ormsty. It started innocently enough, like most things do, texting, little games, inside jokes. But those chats grew into strange, intimate conversations, romantic messages, late-night confessions, and then the sharing of personal images, all without me knowing, all while I thought she was just passing time in her room. I used to think my daughter was just coping with her loneliness, passing time on social media like so many others her age. I didn't see the danger. I didn't show much sensitivity toward her online habits. I left her alone, assuming it was a phase she'd grow out of. But I was wrong. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. My daughter had fallen for a man she'd never even met in person, someone who had only seen his image online. Their messages, their phone calls, all spiraled into a whirlwind of emotions. Eventually, he proposed to her. When I confronted her, she admitted that he was unemployed, lazy, and spent most of his time wandering the internet. He had no ambition, no real direction in life. Worse yet, she told me he constantly flirted with other women online, had no boundaries at all when it came to girls and strangers. I was stunned. This wasn't love. This was a fantasy, a danger wrapped in digital words. I tried to stop it, but instead of listening, my daughter turned on me. She threatened me. She said if I didn't agree to the proposal, she would run away from home, run away from her family. From the proposal to the engagement were rushed. Everything happened in less than a week. I didn't even get a chance to catch my breath. And then Ross and the man, he called himself Tom, of all things, decided to go on their honeymoon. It was strange to me, mysterious. It hadn't even been a few days since the engagement ceremony, but I couldn't say no. I didn't want to push her further away. So they left, heading to northern cities to visit his supposed relatives, none of whom had bothered to show up for the engagement. But their honeymoon didn't even last 3 full days. Then came the phone call. Her voice sounded distant, uncertain. She said, "We need money. Send the money to Tom's bank account. We've decided to start our life here." Before I could respond, she hung up. After that, she stopped answering my calls altogether. I was devastated. I tried again and again to reach her. Nothing. Eventually, I heard from some distant relatives that both she and the man were still active on dating platforms and social media, living in their own private world, disconnected from reality. 6 months have passed. Not a single word from my daughter. Not a visit. Not even the sound of her voice. Only once, in response to one of the many desperate messages I sent her, she replied, "Don't interfere with my life. Don't follow my destiny anymore. Think of me as dead and forget me." Those words broke me, but I'm sure they weren't her own. Something is wrong. She would never say that unless she was forced to. I know my daughter, I raised her. She's caught in something dark, something she can't escape on her own, and now, here I am. The woman, crying helplessly. My voice trembling, my heart full of questions, my soul hollow with grief. My daughter is out there, and I don't know where to turn. All I know is, I will never give up on her. The police officer sat silently, his pen resting on the edge of the notebook, eyes soft with concern. He across from her, tired, worn, trembling, clutched a tissue that had long since stopped being useful. Her voice was now reduced to whispers, as though each word pulled something from deep inside her chest. "I can't sleep at night," she continued. "I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying that last call over and over. I wonder if she was alone, if someone was standing just outside the room, listening, or instructing her." The officer leaned forward. "Have you spoken to the authorities?" She shook her head. "I don't know what to tell them. What proof do I have? A message? A feeling? I went to the northern city once, alone, pretending I was visiting family. I asked questions, but no one had heard of them. It was like they'd vanished." Her voice cracked again. There was no home, no sign of a couple starting a life, just empty words and shadows. The officer made a few quiet notes, but his eyes never left the woman's face. "She's my daughter," the woman said, as if trying to convince someone, perhaps herself. I know her laugh, her eyes, the way her voice curls up at the end of a sentence when she's unsure. That message she sent me, that wasn't her. I swear to God, someone made her write it, or something happened after, something terrible. There was a long silence in the room. Then, in a voice that seemed to come from far away, she added, "And last week, I saw her." The officer blinked. "You saw her?" The woman nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around the tissue. "I was coming out of the market. It was just a glimpse, but I swear it was her. She had sunglasses on, but I recognized her hands." mother always knows. She was getting into a white car with a tinted window, and the man driving, I didn't see his face clearly, but there was something cold about him, like he was watching me. Did she see you? I don't know. Maybe, but if she did, she didn't react. Do you remember the license plate? I tried to follow them, but the car disappeared into the traffic, like it had never been there. The officer sat back, visibly unsettled now. Would you be willing to give a full statement? We can help you. The woman's eyes filled with new tears. Yes, please. I don't care what it takes. I'll knock on every door in city. I go door to door to find her if I have to. I just want to know if she's alive, if she's safe, and if not. Her voice trailed off into silence. Outside, the call to prayer echoed through the air, distant yet grounding. Inside the quiet room, the story of a lost daughter and a mother's resolve had only just begun. The salty breeze of the coast swept in through the cracks of the old house. It didn't smell like home. It never had. Ross sat by the window, staring at the blurred outline of the sea. Her phone rested silently on the table beside her. No calls, no messages. Just a black screen and the weight of everything left unsaid. She had read her mother's texts 100 times. Every word was a dagger. But she hadn't replied since the last one, the one she hadn't written herself. The man who now called himself her husband had stood over her shoulder, eyes like glass. "Write it," he had said. And she had. Not because she wanted to, but because she had seen what happened when you didn't obey. He hadn't always been like this. At first he was charming, mysterious. He made her feel wanted, special, like someone finally saw her in a world that barely blinked. But the honeymoon had been a trap. The moment they arrived to that city, everything shifted. There were no relatives to meet, no home to visit, only a small, crumbling house tucked behind tall metal gates. No neighbors, no visitors, just silence and the occasional sound of a lock clicking shut. It wasn't love that kept her there anymore. It was fear. He controlled everything, her phone, her food, her steps. When she asked to go out, he smiled with too many teeth and said, "You're safe here. The world out there doesn't deserve you." When she asked to call her mother, he watched her like a hawk, a quiet knife tucked beneath his tone. Song wasn't even sure how long it had been anymore. Weeks, months. Time had melted into the sea breeze, into the repetition of meals and silence and subtle threats. But last week, everything changed. She saw her mother, just for a second, across the street, carrying a bag of vegetables, stepping out of a taxi. Their eyes met, or had they? Her heart screamed in her chest. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. And then he pulled her into the car, slammed the door, drove away like the devil himself was chasing them. Since then, something had been stirring inside her, a flicker of rebellion, a buried scream pushing toward the surface. That night, after he fell asleep, she crept to the kitchen, opened the lowest drawer. Behind a rusted can opener and a broken corkscrew was the small phone she'd hidden weeks ago, an old Nokia, no internet, just numbers. She had stolen it from the market when he wasn't looking. Paid for it with a bracelet. Her fingers trembled as she turned it on. 1 bar of signal. That was enough. She typed a message slowly. "Mama, I'm alive. Please help me. Don't reply. Just come. The place with the red gate. Come before it's too late." She sent it, and then she slid the phone beneath the floorboard. She didn't know if it would reach. But hope had a way of finding cracks in the darkest walls. It was late evening when the phone buzzed. Walls. It was late evening when the phone buzzed. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that follows too many days of silence. She had just finished washing the last dish and was drying her hands when she heard it. A faint buzz from her bedroom, like the wings of a trapped insect. At first she ignored it. No one called her anymore. But then came a second buzz, and a third. With a strange tension wrapping around her chest, she hurried into the room and picked up the phone. One message, unknown number. She tapped the screen. "Mama, I'm alive. Please help me. Don't reply. Just come. The place with the red gate. Come before it's too late." Her breath caught. The phone almost fell from her hands. The words swam before her eyes, but there was no mistaking them. It was her daughter, her song. Tears spilled instantly, but she forced her hands to stay steady. No reply. No panic. Just action. She stared at the screen for a few more seconds, then deleted the message, just in case. Next, she reached for the small notebook tucked inside her drawer. On one of its pages, she had scribbled a list of addresses and notes from her previous visit to Hormuz, the ones the police had said were too vague to act on. But now she had something solid. The red gate. She remembered it. She had seen it. A large rusted gate near the old salt road by the coast. She had walked past it and paused once, drawn to it by something she couldn't explain, but it had seemed locked, abandoned. Her hands moved faster now. She put pistol a small bag, just enough to keep things light. She didn't call the police this time. She didn't tell her husband. She couldn't risk delays. This was a mother's war, and she would go alone if she had to. By sunrise, she was on the first bus to go to the address. As the dusty road curved through the mountains, her eyes remained fixed on the horizon, and in her heart burned a single flame. This time, I will bring my daughter back. It was as hot and dry as she remembered. The bus wheezed to a stop near the old town square, and she stepped out with her small bag clutched tightly in her hand. Her eyes scanned the dusty horizon, picking out familiar landmarks, the quiet alleys, the painted doors, the scent of salt and clay. But her feet knew exactly where to go. Down the narrow road past the fish market, beyond the rows of pale yellow homes, to the very edge of town, where the buildings thinned and the silence grew heavier. There it was, the red gate. Its rusted surface loomed tall and still, flaking paint like dried blood, half hidden behind an overgrown wall of cactus and stone. She paused. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment she was afraid, terrified even. But the fear was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She stepped closer, lifted her hand, and knocked. Nothing. She tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. Then a faint sound, a shuffle, a whisper, and the unmistakable creak of a floorboard. She placed her ear to the gate. "Ross," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Are you there? It's Mama." No answer. She tried the handle. It didn't move. Locked. She looked around. No one was nearby. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a very small wrench, the one she'd packed for protection. With one sharp twist of desperation, she struck the rusty padlock once, twice, clang, clang, and on the third strike it snapped. The gate creaked open. She stepped inside. The yard was overgrown with dry weeds. The house itself was small, crumbling, its windows dark. She approached slowly, each step heavier than the last. She reached the door. It was slightly ajar, and then a whisper. "Mama." She froze. That voice so faint, so broken, but real. "Ross," she called again, louder this time. Footsteps from the back room. Suddenly a shadow moved across the hall, and then he appeared. Not the young man she had seen in pictures, not the gentle, shy face from the engagement ceremony. No, this man was older, thinner, his eyes sunken, wild. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed. Her heart thudded. "Where is my daughter?" "She's fine," he said, his voice oily and false. "She belongs here now." "Where is she?" Her voice cracked like thunder. And then, from behind him, Ross emerged, her face pale, her eyes hollow, but she was alive. "Mama," she whispered again, tears welling up. The man reached for her arm, but Ross recoiled. "Don't touch her," the mother said, stepping forward with a fury that only grief and love could birth. "You lied to her, you tricked her, and you held her here like a prisoner." "She chose to stay," he said calmly, but his hand was trembling. "No," Ross said, her voice finally rising. "Not anymore." And in that moment, everything changed. The mother reached out the pistol and bang, bang. Then she grabbed her daughter's hand. Together, they ran. Through the hallway, out the door, past the red gate. Behind them, the man shouted, "Cursed." But he didn't follow. Not this time. They didn't stop running until they reached the main road, until the sound of the sea was behind them, until Song collapsed into her mother's arms, weeping, whispering again and again, "I thought I'd never see you again."